I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA called the cops to try and enter my garage, all because I wouldn't hand over the key. And their reason? He said I was hiding hazardous materials in my garage. Funny thing is, the only crime I was guilty of was catching their break-in on camera and pressing play for the whole neighborhood. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Mika Virtanen. I'm a Finnish carpenter. That means I like things to be right. I like corners to be square, lines to be plumb, and joints to be tight. I like quiet. For a long time, I didn't have it. So, when I finally saved up enough to buy a house, I picked a place called Meadow Ridge Estates. It sounded quiet. It had neat little lawns and houses that all looked like they came out of the same box, just in different colors. Mine was gray. It had a 2-car garage, which was the real selling point. A man needs a garage. It's a workshop, a sanctuary, a place to think. Inside my garage, I had 2 things that mattered a lot to me. The first was a 1968 Triumph Bonneville, candy apple blue. It was my grandpa's. He left it to me when he passed, and it was more than just a motorcycle. It was a piece of him, a promise I made to keep it running. The second thing was new. It was a safety, a big one, about 4 foot tall, heavy as a dead elephant. I bought it blind at a storage auction. I'm a sucker for a mystery box, and this was the biggest one I'd ever seen. It took 4 of us to get it off the truck and onto a heavy-duty dolly in the corner of my garage. We used a pallet jack and steel rollers to ease it down the ramps without cracking the slab. I hadn't gotten around to opening it yet. I figured I'd get to it when I got to it. For now, it was just a big gray metal box holding a secret. My secret in my garage. It was perfect for about a week. Then came the letter. It was from the Homeowners Association, the HOA. It was an invitation to a mandatory meeting. I'd met the HOA president once. Her name was Brenda Harrison. She had that look, the one that says she knows what's best for you, and you're going to like it or else. The meeting was in the community clubhouse. It smelled like stale coffee and quiet desperation. Brenda stood at the front, smiling a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She filibustered about curb appeal until everyone's souls tried to escape through the exit sign. Brenda had a clipboard full of fines and a smile you'd need a hazmat suit to handle. She called it community, like a pickpocket calling it wealth redistribution. Then she dropped the bomb. A new community safety initiative. She said that for emergency access, the HOA would now require a key to every homeowner's garage and any storage outbuilding. The room got very quiet. People looked at each other, then at their shoes. Nobody wants to be the first one to say no to a woman like Brenda. But I'm a carpenter. I build things. I build doors. And I put locks on them for a reason. So I raised my hand. She pointed at me, her smile tightening. Yes, Mr. Virtanen? Yeah, I'm not doing that, I said. The room got even quieter. Excuse me, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. My garage is my property, I said, keeping my voice calm and even. It's attached to my house. It's full of my tools, my personal stuff. You're not getting a key. She stared at me. I could see the gears turning in her head. She wasn't used to people saying no. It's a mandatory safety rule, Mr. Virtanen, for the fire department, in case of an emergency. The fire department has axes, I said. They'll get in faster that way. A few people coughed to hide a laugh. Brenda's face went from pale to pink. Her boyfriend, a guy named Trevor Lynch, who always looked like he was trying to sell you a watch he found on the bus, stood up beside her. He was her muscle, I guess. It's for everyone's protection, he said, puffing out his chest. I just looked at him. No, thanks. I'll protect myself. Brenda took a deep breath, collecting herself. She put the fake smile back on. Very well, Mr. Virtanen. Refusal to comply will result in fines. And I must warn you, we've had reports of unapproved structures being stored in garages. If we have reason to believe there's a violation, we will take action. If you try to open that garage door without a compliance officer present, we will consider it an attempt to hide a violation, and we will call 911. She looked right at me. It wasn't a general announcement anymore. It was a threat, delivered in front of 50 of my new neighbors. A threat over a garage door, over a key. I looked back at her, gave a little nod, and walked out of the meeting. I knew this wasn't about a key. It wasn't about safety. It was about control. She wanted to own every piece of this neighborhood, right down to the dust bunnies in my garage. I got home and stood in my driveway, looking at the big, closed door. Inside was my grandpa's bike, my mystery safe, my space. And she thought she could threaten me for it. She thought a phone call to the police would make me fold. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I had work to do on that bike. The carburetors needed tuning, and I was going to do it tomorrow. That meant I was going to open my garage door. And if she wanted to call 911, well, she could go right ahead. This was my home, my castle, and she had just declared war on it. The next day was a Saturday. The sun was out, the birds were singing, and a notice was taped to my garage door. It was a fine, $50 for failure to comply with HOA Mandate 7.4, emergency access. Below the fine was a handwritten note. This is your only warning. I peeled it off, crumpled it up, and tossed it in the recycling bin. A warning? I'm a grown man. I own this place. The bank and I, anyway. A warning from the queen of the cul-de-sac didn't mean much to me. I had a plan for the day. My grandpa's Triumph wasn't just a machine. It was a memory. I remember sitting on the tank as a little kid while he polished the chrome, the smell of wax and gasoline filling his dusty garage. He taught me how to hold a wrench. He taught me that if you take care of your tools, they'll take care of you. He also taught me that you don't let a bully push you around, no matter how big they are or how important they think they are. A man's got a right to his own space, Mika, he'd say. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. So, this wasn't just about a garage door. It was about that promise. I grabbed the remote, pointed it at the door, and pushed the button. The door groaned, shuddered, and then rolled up, flooding the garage with sunlight. It felt good. It felt right. I stood there for a moment, just breathing in the free air. I could feel eyes on me. I glanced across the street. Sure enough, there was Brenda Harrison, standing on her porch, phone pressed to her ear, a smug, triumphant look on her face. She gave me a little wave, the kind of wave a queen gives to a peasant she's about to have thrown in the dungeon. She dialed with my garage door wide open, exactly like she'd threatened in the meeting. I just smiled and waved back. Let her call. I had nothing to hide. I rolled the Bonneville out onto the driveway, the blue paint sparkling in the sun. I got my tools out, laid them on a clean rag, and got to work. About 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. A sergeant got out. He was a big guy, calm, with a face that said he'd seen it all and wasn't impressed by much of it. His name tag read, Miller. Brenda came marching across the street, Trevor trailing behind her like a loyal puppy. Thank you for coming, officer, she said, her voice filled with drama. This man, Mr. Virtanen, is in violation of our community's safety rules. He was explicitly told not to open this garage. We have reason to believe he's storing hazardous materials. Sergeant Miller looked at me. He looked at the open toolbox. He looked back at her. Ma'am, what hazardous materials are we talking about? We don't know, she said, as if that was the whole point. That's why we need access. He refuses to comply. He's hiding something. I stayed quiet, letting her dig her own hole. I just wiped a bit of grease off my hands with a rag. Miller walked over to me. This your house, sir? He asked. Yes, Sergeant, I said. I walked inside and came back out with the deed. This your motorcycle? Yes, Sergeant. I handed him the title and my registration. He looked them over. He was thorough. He handed them back. Everything seems to be in order. He turned to Brenda. Ma'am, this is a civil dispute between you and your homeowners association. It is not a police matter. He owns the property. He can open his garage. But the rules, she sputtered. The rules don't override the law, Miller said, his voice flat. And right now, you're asking me to enforce your neighborhood rules, which I can't do. What I can do is give you a warning about misusing the 911 system. This is not an emergency. Do not call us again unless there is a real one. Brenda's face was a picture. The smugness was gone, replaced by pure, uncut fury. She was being told no by someone with actual authority, and she couldn't stand it. Trevor started to say something, but Miller gave him a look that shut him up instantly. Have a good day, Mr. Virtanen, the sergeant said to me, giving a nod. You too, Sergeant. Thanks. He got back in his car and drove away. Brenda stood there frozen on the sidewalk. She looked at me, and if looks could kill, I'd be a pile of ash on my own driveway. I just smiled, picked up a screwdriver, and went back to work on my grandpa's bike. A white golf cart with HOA livery whined to a stop at my curb. A man in a reflective vest climbed out like he was about to direct air traffic. His badge read, Gary, Compliance. Trevor lurked a step behind, arms crossed, jaw bravely clenched from a safe distance. Afternoon, Mr. Virtanen, Gary said, clipboard up like a shield. Random safety inspection. Garage access required under the initiative. Random, I said, looking past him to where Brenda watched from her porch like a snake at a mouse parade. Sure. You got a warrant. We don't need one, Gary said. The board isn't a court, I said. And this isn't common property. That's my door. Trevor tried on his tough guy voice. We can fine you every day. I pointed to the no trespassing sign and then to the driveway across the street. Daniel Park stood there, sipping coffee from a mug the size of a soup pot. He raised it in a friendly way that somehow felt like artillery. Gary swallowed. At minimum, he said, I need to visually confirm no dangerous equipment is operating without supervision. Visually confirm this, I said and hit the starter. The Triumph barked to life and settled into a calm, even idle. Supervised. The sound must have tickled something territorial in Brenda, because she marched halfway down her steps and shouted, Document his noncompliance, Gary. Gary flipped to a fresh page, pen hovering. Sir, if you refuse entry, I am obligated to note the refusal. And also note, I said, I asked you for a warrant and 2 cups of coffee. You brought neither. Daniel coughed. It sounded like a laugh, trying to wear a fake mustache. Trevor muttered, Let's just go, and tugged Gary's sleeve. The clipboard closed with a sad little click. The golf cart whined away. I went back to the screwdriver. The idol stayed perfect. So did my mood. The first round was over. I had won. But I knew, looking at the hatred in her eyes, that this was just the beginning. She wasn't going to fight me with rules and fines anymore. She'd been embarrassed, and a person like Brenda can't let that stand. I had a feeling her next move would be a lot dirtier. I finished tuning the carbs, the engine settling into a perfect, rhythmic idle. But as the sun went down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night, I learned I was right. That night, I went to bed feeling good. I'd stood my ground, and the law had backed me up. I figured Brenda would lick her wounds and maybe move on to bothering someone else about the color of their mailbox. I was wrong. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, a sound woke me up. It was a high-pitched whining noise, like a dentist's drill, but deeper. It was coming from the direction of the garage. My first thought was that a raccoon was trying to chew its way into the trash, but this was a metallic sound, a grinding. I sat up in bed, my heart starting to thump a little faster. I'm a calm guy, but I don't like strange noises in the middle of the night. I have a small security camera system, nothing fancy, just a couple of cheap cameras I'd set up, one pointing at the driveway and one inside the garage. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and pulled up the feed. The driveway was empty, but the garage camera. My blood went cold. 2 figures were inside my garage. They'd pried open the small side door. One was a big guy I didn't recognize. The other was Trevor, Brenda's boyfriend. The big guy was holding a heavy-duty drill, pressing it against the face of my auction safe. Sparks were flying. They were trying to drill the lock. Anger hit me like a physical blow. This was my home, my space, and they were in it, trying to steal from me. My first instinct was to grab the heaviest thing I could find and go out there and handle it myself. But my grandpa's other piece of advice echoed in my head. Never start a fight, Mika, but always be ready to finish it. And if you can, be smarter than the other guy. A brawl in the dark with 2 guys? That was a bad idea. Calling the cops was a good idea, but I wanted more. I wanted proof. I wanted to catch them red-handed in a way they couldn't deny. And I had a little surprise ready for just such an occasion. When I first moved in, I noticed the sprinkler system had a few heads right near the garage side door and the front porch. Being a guy who likes to tinker, I'd made a little modification. I'd installed a separate valve I could trigger remotely from my phone. And in the line leading to those specific sprinkler heads, I had installed a simple filter chamber. Inside that chamber, blue chalk-lined dust, the kind you use to snap straight lines on a job site. It's messy. It stains everything for a few hours, but it's completely harmless. It was my silent, stupid little burglar alarm. I hit record on my phone screen, making sure I was capturing the video feed from the garage camera. Then I switched to the app that controlled the sprinklers. I selected the porch surprise zone, and I hit on. For a second, nothing happened. Then, on my camera feed, I saw the side door to the garage swing open. The big guy and Trevor came stumbling out, coughing. The heads by the side door and porch fired in sync. A bright blue chalk slurry under pressure, hitting them full in the face. They yelped, staggering back, completely blinded and covered head to toe in an impossible-to-miss layer of smuff blue powder. They looked like 2 idiots who had lost a fight with a paint factory. They slipped and slid on the now-damp porch, bumping into each other. Trevor fell right on his backside. It would have been hilarious if they hadn't just broken into my house. Lights started coming on in the neighboring houses. My neighbor across the street, Daniel Park, opened his front door. He just stood there staring at the 2 blue men flailing around on my porch. Trevor and his buddy scrambled to their feet and ran, leaving a faint trail of blue dust down the sidewalk as they disappeared into the dark. I stopped the recording on my phone. I had it all. Clear video of them inside my garage trying to drill my safe, followed by the glorious finale of them getting blasted with chalk dust. They weren't just criminals. They were idiots, and I had the proof. I sat there in the dark watching the video again. The anger was still there, but it was a cold anger now, a calm, focused anger. This wasn't about a key or a squabble anymore. They had crossed a line, a big one. They had broken into my home. And now I was going to use their stupidity to tear down everything Brenda Harrison had built. The game had changed, and I had the measurements and the blueprint. The next morning, I didn't bother cleaning up the blue dust on the porch. I left it there as a monument to their stupidity. I made a cup of coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and transferred the video file from my phone to a laptop. I watched it again. The evidence was perfect. You could see Trevor's face clearly. You could see them trying to break into the safe. You could see them getting what they deserved. My first call wasn't a 911. It was a direct call to Sergeant Miller's desk at the precinct. I left a message. Sergeant, this is Mika Vertanen from Meadow Ridge. We spoke yesterday. There was another incident last night, a more serious one. I have video evidence of a breaking and entering and an attempt to break into that safe we talked about. I think you're going to want to see it. An hour later, Miller called back. His voice was all business. Mr. Vertanen, I'm on my way. When he arrived, I didn't have him stand on the porch. I invited him in, poured him a cup of coffee, and had the laptop open on the table. Before I show you this, I said, I want to be clear. I don't know what's in that safe. I bought it at a storage auction. For all I know, it's full of old newspapers. But Brenda Harrison and her boyfriend, Trevor Lynch, seem to think it's worth breaking the law over. Miller nodded slowly. Show me. I hit play. He watched the whole thing without a word. He saw them pry the door. He saw the sparks from the drill. He saw their faces. And he saw the blue chalk cloud. When it was over, he let out a long, slow breath. A tiny smile played on his lips for a second. Chalk dust, he asked. Harmless, I said. But effective, and it makes for a good visual. That it does, he said, his face serious again. That's Trevor Lynch, the HOA president's boyfriend. And that's a clear criminal act. Attempted burglary and fraud. He looked at the safe in the garage, then back at me. Here's the situation, Mr. Vertanen. They are obsessed with this safe. You're in the middle of it. The best way to resolve this and to figure out what's really going on is to see what's inside it. I agree, I said, but I'm not a criminal. I'm not going to have my property seized and cracked open like I did something wrong. You won't, Miller said. I'm going to a judge for a search warrant to open the safe, executed with you present. It'll be supervised and by the book. It protects you, and it lets us get to the bottom of this. Are you okay with that? This was the moment. The mystery of the safe was about to be solved. Part of me was excited. Part of me was nervous. But mostly, I was determined. This was the path to ending Brenda's reign. I'm okay with that, I said. Let's do it. It took a few hours. Miller came back with the warrant and a police-approved locksmith. It felt strange standing in my own garage, watching a stranger work on my property under the watchful eye of the law, but it felt right. The locksmith was good. No drilling this time. He worked on the dial, listening, feeling. It was a delicate process. After about 45 minutes, there was a loud, satisfying clunk. The handle turned. The massive door swung open. We all leaned in. Both officers tapped their body cams. We stood inside my garage with lights aimed into the safe. It wasn't full of old newspapers. The top shelf had stacks of cash, bundles of hundreds and fifties neatly wrapped. It looked like a lot. The shelf below that had a collection of fake IDs passports and driver's licenses from different states, all with the same man's photo, but not Trevor's, under different names. My heart was pounding. This was bigger than I thought. But the most important thing was on the bottom shelf. It was a simple black ledger, a notebook. Miller picked it up, handling it carefully with gloved hands. He opened it. It was full of handwritten entries, dates, names, dollar amounts. Miller flicked a glance at the IDs. Bagman, he said. Whoever owned that unit held the aliases, the cash, and Trevor's paper trail. My eyes scanned the page. I saw a name, T. Lynch. Next to it were dates and payment amounts. Then I saw descriptions for the payments. Pool repair, drainage maintenance, clubhouse roof. These were all HOA projects, big-ticket items. And then I saw the truth. The amounts in the ledger paid out to T. Lynch were the exact amounts that were missing from the HOA's budget, the money Brenda Harrison was supposed to be managing. It was all there, a detailed record of their entire scam. Miller looked at me, his face grim. Mr. Vertanen, he said, I think you just blew this whole thing wide open. The safe wasn't my secret anymore. It was their tomb, and we had just opened the door. Sergeant Miller and his team took the contents of the safe as evidence. They photographed everything, bagged it, and logged it. With Miller's okay, I snapped high-res photos of the ledger and contents before they sealed the evidence bags, the cash, the fake IDs, and most importantly, the ledger. As they were packing up, Miller pulled me aside. "Listen to me, Mika," he said, his voice low. "This is a criminal investigation now, a serious one. We're talking embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy. Brenda Harrison and Trevor Lynch are the primary suspects, but they don't know that we have this yet. They just know they failed to get into your safe. They're going to be desperate. What do you think they'll do?" I asked. "I think they're going to get stupid," Miller said. "They're cornered. Don't engage with them. Don't talk to them. If they so much as look at your house funny, you call me directly. My card has my cell number." He was right. A cornered animal is the most dangerous. I spent the rest of the day like a level bubble dead center, calm with a storm on both sides. The air was calm, but I knew the storm was all around me. I tried to work on a small project, sanding a piece of maple for a cabinet door, but I couldn't focus. Every car that drove by, I looked up. Every noise, I tensed. The next morning, the hammer dropped. I was in my kitchen when I saw it. A big flatbed tow truck, the kind used for hauling heavy equipment, was backing into my driveway. A man in a dirty work shirt got out along with a guy operating a huge industrial forklift. They weren't police. They weren't friendly. I walked out my front door and stood on the porch. "Can I help you?" I called out. The driver, a burly guy with a clipboard, walked towards me. He didn't make eye contact. "We're here to remove an unapproved structure from the property," he said, gesturing towards my garage. "What structure?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The safe," he said. "We have a work order from the Meadow Ridge Homeowners Association. It's classified as a hazardous and unapproved item on the common property." "Common property?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "This is my driveway. The safe is in my garage. It's my property. You're not touching it." The guy just shrugged. "Look, buddy, I just have a work order. It's signed by the HOA president. We're getting paid to move the safe, so if you could just step aside." He was trying to be reasonable, but he was also about to help them steal evidence in a criminal investigation. I wasn't going to let that happen. My mind raced. I could call Miller, but by the time he got here, they could have the safe loaded up and gone. I needed to stop them right now, and I couldn't do it alone. Then I had an idea. A big, yellow, 10-ton idea. I pulled out my phone and called my neighbor, Daniel Park. Daniel lived across the street. He was a retired contractor, a good man who had lived in Meadow Ridge for 20 years and hated what Brenda Harrison had done to the neighborhood. He also owned a massive backhoe that he kept parked beside his house for landscaping projects. "Daniel, it's Mika Vertanen," I said, speaking fast. "I need a favor, a big one. Right now." "What's wrong, Mika?" he asked. I could hear the concern in his voice. "Brenda sent a crew with a forklift to take my safe. They're in my driveway." There was a pause. Then I heard Daniel chuckle. It was a low, rumbling sound. "I'll be right there," he said. A minute later, I heard it, the deep, guttural roar of a diesel engine. Daniel's backhoe came trundling out of his driveway and across the street. The truck driver and the forklift operator just stopped and stared. It's not every day you see a full-size backhoe driving through a suburban subdivision. Daniel didn't say a word. He drove right up my driveway, maneuvering the huge machine with expert precision. He positioned it directly in front of my garage door, then lowered the front loader bucket until it rested firmly on the asphalt, completely blocking the entrance. He then swung the backhoe arm around, blocking the forklift's path. He shut off the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. Daniel hopped down from the cab, wiping his hands on his jeans. He walked over to me, completely ignoring the other men. "Morning, Mika," he said, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "Looks like you've got a bit of a parking issue here." The truck driver looked at the backhoe. He looked at his forklift. He looked at me and Daniel standing there. He was a working man. He was getting paid for a job, but he wasn't getting paid enough to deal with this. He wasn't getting paid to fight a 10-ton piece of construction equipment. He let out a sigh, shook his head, and walked back to his truck. "Forget it," he yelled to the forklift operator. "We're leaving." They packed up their gear and drove away without another word. Before the truck cleared the corner, the driver's phone blared on speaker. Brenda's voice came thin and furious. "You tell Mr. Vertanen the board has authority." Daniel leaned on the backhoe's horn. It was a fog horn in a cul-de-sac. The driver winced, hung up, and mouthed nope at me. "Was that our queen?" I asked. Sounded like a coup in yoga pants, Daniel said, climbing back into the cab. Want me to park this on guard dog mode or moat? Moat, I said. Absolutely moat. Daniel and I stood there watching them go. The giant yellow backhoe sat in my driveway like a loyal guard dog. Brenda had tried to use force, and we had met it with bigger force. I owe you one, Daniel, I said. You don't owe me a thing, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. I've been waiting 20 years for a chance to tell that woman no, in a way she'd understand. You just gave me the opportunity. We had won this battle. The empty safe was secure, but I knew this act of open defiance would push Brenda over the edge. She had tried rules. She had tried crime. She had tried force. All had failed. I didn't know what she would do next, but I knew it would be desperate, and I knew it would be ugly. For a day, there was silence. It was a heavy, watchful quiet. Daniel left his backhoe parked in my driveway, a big yellow declaration of defiance. People in the neighborhood would drive by slowly, some giving a thumbs up, others just shaking their heads, not wanting to get involved. Brenda Harrison was nowhere to be seen. I knew she was plotting. I could feel it. The pressure was building. That afternoon, the sky turned a bruised, ugly purple. The weather forecast had called for thunderstorms, but this felt different. The air grew thick and heavy. The wind picked up, whipping leaves and trash across the lawns. Then the rain started. It wasn't a normal rain. It was a downpour, a solid sheet of water that hammered against the roof and turned the streets into shallow rivers. I stood at my living room window, watching the storm. The wind made the street signs chatter like nervous teeth. That matched my mood just fine. The streetlights flickered. The wind howled. Then, through the noise of the storm, I heard another sound. A dog barking, frantic and high-pitched. And then a child's cry. It was a thin, terrified sound, almost swallowed by the wind. I looked down the street. The storm drain at the end of the cul-de-sac the one the HOA was supposed to have cleared and expanded with our dues last spring was completely overwhelmed. Water was backing up, creating a deep, swirling pool where the street dipped. In the middle of that rising water was a little boy, no older than 6 or 7, and a golden retriever. The dog was barking its head off, trying to pull the boy back, but the kid was frozen, crying, the water already up to his waist. It was the Peterson kid from 4 houses down and his dog Max. I didn't think. I just moved. I threw open my front door and ran out into the storm. The rain was so heavy it felt like being hit with tiny rocks. The wind pushed against me. I didn't even bother with the sidewalk. I just ran straight through the lawns, my shoes sinking into the sodden grass. When I got to the edge of the water, it was deeper than I thought. It was cold and moving fast, pulling towards the overwhelmed drain. The kid, little Sammy, was sobbing now, his hands clamped onto the dog's collar. It's okay. I yelled over the storm. I'm coming. He was too scared to even look at me. I waded in. The current was strong, trying to pull my feet out from under me. I braced myself and pushed forward. The water was up to my chest by the time I reached them. The dog, Max, started barking at me, thinking I was a threat. Easy, boy. Easy, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could. I reached out slowly and took the boy's arm. He flinched. Hey, Sammy, I'm Mika, your neighbor. I'm going to get you out of here, okay? We're going to go together. I scooped him up. He was shivering, soaking wet and terrified. He wrapped his arms around my neck like a vice. Max, he cried. We can't leave Max. We're not leaving him, I said. I grabbed the dog's collar with my free hand. Come on, boy. Let's go. With the boy in one arm and the dog in the other, I started to wade back. It was slow going. Every step was a struggle against the current. Finally, my feet hit the slope of the curb, and I stumbled out of the water and onto solid ground. By now, a few other neighbors were out on their porches, drawn by the commotion. Sammy's mom came running out of her house, her face pale with panic. Oh my God, Sammy, she cried, rushing over and grabbing him from me. She hugged him tight, crying with relief. I just stood there dripping, exhausted, while the dog shook a gallon of water all over me. That's when I saw her. Laura Evans. She was a quiet woman who served on the HOA board. She had always seemed nervous at the meetings, like she was afraid of her own shadow. She lived 2 doors down. She was standing on her porch holding a large manila folder, and she was staring at minute at the kid, not at the dog, but at me. Our eyes met. She saw me soaking wet, having just pulled a kid from a flood that was a direct result of the HOA's negligence. The negligence she knew all about. The money that should have fixed that drain was the same money that was in Trevor Lynch's pocket. In that moment, something in her face changed. The fear was replaced by resolve. She gave me a small, firm nod. A nod that said, "I've had enough." The storm was still raging, but for the first time, I felt like the tide was turning in my favor. This wasn't about a safe or a garage anymore. It was about a neighborhood. It was about people. And my simple act of helping a scared kid and his dog had just earned me a powerful new ally. As Sammy's mom thanked me over and over, Laura Evans walked down her steps, clutching that folder, and started walking towards my house. She had made her choice. I was still dripping on my own doormat when Laura Evans knocked. I opened the door, and she just stood there for a second, rain plastering her hair to her face, clutching that folder to her chest like a life raft. "Can I come in, Mr. Vertanen?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Of course, Laura. Come on." She stepped inside, looking around nervously as if she expected Brenda to pop out of a closet. I grabbed a couple of towels. I gave one to her and used the other to mop up the puddle I was making. "Thank you," she said, drying her face. "What you did out there?" "For Sammy. That drain was supposed to be fixed 3 months ago. We approved the expenditure. The money was paid out." "I know," I said quietly. "To a company called Lynch Contracting, right?" Her eyes went wide. "How did you know that?" I led her to the kitchen table. For the next hour, I told her everything. I told her about the safe, the break-in, the chalk dust, the warrant, and the ledger we found inside. As I talked, I could see the fear in her eyes turning into a cold, hard anger. She had been a part of T-Sin, unwitting one, but a part nonetheless. She had voted yes on invoices she thought were legitimate. She had trusted Brenda. "She lied to us," Laura whispered, staring at the table. "She lied about everything." She finally pushed the manila folder across the table to me. "I was afraid," she said. "Brenda can be vindictive. She finds out what people care about and threatens it. My husband has a home business. She threatened to bury us in zoning complaints, so I kept my mouth shut. But tonight, seeing what could have happened to that little boy because of money she and her boyfriend stole, I can't stay quiet anymore." She opened the folder. "These are my copies of the board meeting minutes for the last 2 years. The financial statements, the invoices we approved, the ones from Trevor's company. I made copies of everything." My hands were shaking slightly as I picked up the first sheet. It was all there. I spread the documents out on my table. It felt like I was assembling a weapon. It was a night for evidence. I pulled out my laptop and created a timeline. First, I got the audio file of Brenda's 911 call from Sergeant Miller. Miller cued his body cam on a department tablet and said I could request a copy later. He figured it might be useful. I played it. Her voice was shrill, panicked, and full of lies. "Yes, he's threatening me. He's being aggressive. He's hiding something dangerous." It was a masterful performance of a woman in fear, but knowing what I knew now, it was just the sound of a cornered liar. I placed that audio file at the top of my timeline. Next, I took the body cam footage from Sergeant Miller's first visit. It showed me calm and cooperative. It showed him professional and by the book. And it showed Brenda, hysterical and demanding, being told that she was in the wrong. I put that video next. Then came my own masterpiece, the security camera footage. I edited it into 2 parts. Part 1, the break-in, the grainy nighttime shot of Trevor Lynch and his hired thug trying to drill my safe. Part 2, the Blue Man Group, the glorious, colorful explosion of chalk dust and the 2 idiots slipping and falling all over my porch. Damning, embarrassing, perfect. I laid the photos of the safe's contents next to the videos. The stacks of cash, the fake IDs with the same man's photo under different names, and the star of the show, the ledger. I took high-resolution photos of every single page. Finally, I took Laura's documents. I scanned each one. The invoices from Lynch Contracting, the HOA financial statements showing the payments going out, the meeting minutes where Brenda assured the board the work had been completed. I put them side by side. The ledger entry for drainage maintenance, $15,000. Next to the invoice from Trevor for $15,000. Next to the bank statement showing the $15,000 payment. Next to the meeting minutes where Brenda said the drain was fixed. And all of it followed by the image of me pulling a little boy out of the floodwaters caused by that very same drain. It was a perfect, unbreakable chain of evidence. A complete story of greed, corruption, and lies told through their own words, their own actions, and their own documents. It was an evidence montage worthy of a Hollywood movie. It was beautiful. It was everything I needed. Laura and I sat there in silence, looking at the mountain of proof spread across my kitchen table. "What are you going to do with it all?" she asked. I looked at the timeline, at the videos, at the faces of Brenda and Trevor. I could just hand it all over to Miller and let the justice system do its work. But that wasn't enough. They hadn't just stolen money. They had poisoned this community with fear and suspicion. They had turned neighbors against each other. A quiet arrest in the middle of the night wouldn't fix that. The neighborhood needed to see the truth. They needed to be the ones to pass judgment. I'm not just going to take Brenda down, I said, looking at Laura. We are. The whole neighborhood. We're going to take back our community, and we're going to do it at the next HOA meeting. The plan was simple, but it had to be fast. The next HOA meeting was in 5 days. According to the bylaws Laura had given me, a special vote to recall a board president could be called if a petition was signed by 25% of the homeowners. There were 100 houses in Meadow Ridge. We needed 25 signatures, but I didn't want 25. I wanted 50. I wanted a clear majority before we even walked into that room. We need to go door to door, I told Laura and Daniel Park, who had joined our little conspiracy. We were huddled in my garage, the big yellow backhoe still standing guard outside like a sentinel. Daniel grinned. I haven't done this since I campaigned for city council 30 years ago. I'm in. Laura was nervous but determined. People are afraid of her, she warned. She'll find out we're doing this. She'll retaliate. That's why we don't just ask for signatures, I said. I held up a tablet. We show them. We show them everything. I had spent the entire night organizing the evidence into a clean, simple presentation. It was a story in 5 parts. The lie, Brenda's 911 call. The law, Miller's body cam. The crime, the break-in. The greed, the ledger and the HOA financials. The consequence, a photo of me carrying Sammy out of the flood. We made a list and divided up the neighborhood. Daniel took the East End, where he knew everyone. Laura took the West End, where people knew her as a quiet board member. I took the middle, the belly of the beast, which included the houses closest to Brenda's. The first door I knocked on belonged to a man named Mr. Henderson. Henderson was a nice enough guy, always watering his prize-winning petunias. He was a rule follower. Mika, he said, looking nervously over my shoulder as if Brenda might be hiding in his bushes. I don't want any trouble. I'm not here to make trouble, Henderson, I said. I'm here to show you the truth. Can you give me 5 minutes? He hesitated, then nodded. I stood on his doorstep and played the presentation. I watched his face as he listened to the 911 call. I saw his eyes widen at the video of the break-in. I saw him lean in close to see the numbers on the ledger. When the final photo of the flood rescue came up, he just shook his head. That money was for the drain, he said softly. My basement gets a little water every time it storms hard. I can't imagine. That poor kid. He took the clipboard from me and signed the petition without another word. Good luck, Mika, he said. You're doing the right thing. It was like that at almost every house. People were hesitant at first. They were used to Brenda's iron-fisted rule, but the evidence was too powerful to ignore. The video of Trevor getting blasted with blue chalk was particularly effective. It made them seem less like scary villains and more like cartoon crooks. It made them beatable. House 43 answered with a chain still on the door. A cat glared through the crack like head of security. State your business, the woman said. She wore readers on a lanyard and the expression of someone who files returns in pen. I'm Evelyn Price, chair of the decorations subcommittee. Mika Vertanen, I said. We're asking for a recall vote. 5 minutes and a video. I know the bylaws, she said, proud and ominous. Section 3.1 authorizes emergency ordinances that don't supersede criminal law, I said. Also, Section 9.2 requires transparent accounting. We have payments to Lynch Contracting for a drain that almost ate a 6-year-old. Evelyn sniffed. Hyperbole is unbecoming. The drain did not eat anyone. You're right, I said, because I jumped in. She hesitated, then peered at the tablet. When Trevor took a face full of blue chalk, her mouth twitched in spite of herself. She shut the door, unchained it, opened it wider, then pointed the pen at me like a rapier. I do not approve of your tone, she said and signed anyway. And I will be monitoring your mailbox for illegal stickers. I sleep better already, I said. The next house was a brick ranch with a lawn so precise it looked squeegeed. A man opened the door wearing a tie and gym shorts. I can't get involved, he said. She'll come for my fence. She already came for your wallet, I said, and put the ledger page next to his own HOA statement. He stared at the matching numbers as if they were a magic trick. His wife appeared with a dish towel. Honey, sign, she said. I'm not bailing out a fence again. She signed. He signed. Their golden retriever stamped a paw on the edge of the clipboard. He signs in spirit, she said. We all shook like we'd closed on a house. By the end of the first day, we had 18 signatures. Brenda, of course, found out. She must have seen us from her window. An email went out to the entire neighborhood that evening. Urgent community alert. The subject line screamed. It was a masterpiece of paranoid delusion. She accused me of being a disgruntled and dangerous individual, of harassing homeowners, and spreading malicious lies to undermine the safety and security of Meadow Ridge. She claimed the recall petition was illegal and that anyone who signed it could be subject to fines for engaging in divisive community activities. It was a scare tactic and a desperate one, but it worked on some. The next day, the doors were harder to open. People would peek through their blinds and pretend they weren't home. One woman told me, "I believe you, but I can't sign. My fence is technically 2 inches too high. She'll make me tear it down." Brenda had trained them well. Fear was her currency. We were stalled at 22 signatures. We needed 3 more just to call the vote. I was starting to feel discouraged. We were sitting in Daniel's kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at the signature sheet. "She's got them spooked," Daniel said, sighing. "Maybe we should just give what we have to the police and let them handle it," Laura suggested, her old nervousness returning. "No," I said, shaking my head. "That lets her off the hook. She'll claim she was the victim of a rogue boyfriend. She'll resign, and the neighborhood will never know the full truth. She accused me of undermining safety, which is a poetic way to describe fixing the storm drain she billed us for twice. The system she built, the fear, it will still be here. We have to do this ourselves. We have to do it in the open." I looked at the list of houses we hadn't tried yet. "There are about a dozen left. We just need a few more people to be brave," I said. A white pickup rolled to a stop and idled out front. Trevor, bruised ego in a ball cap, pretended to check texts while staring holes through Daniel's front window. "Harassment, Exhibit A," Laura whispered. I stepped onto the porch and waved like we were neighbors from a toothpaste commercial. "Morning. Need directions to a legitimate invoice." He revved once and crept away. 2 kids on scooters zipped by and, God bless them, yelled, "Blue man doofus." The tension cracked just enough for us to breathe. Just then, there was a knock on Daniel's door. It was Mrs. Peterson, Sammy's mom. She was holding a plate of cookies. "I heard what you all are doing," she said, her voice strong. "I saw Brenda's email. Lies, all of it." She looked at the petition on the table. "Can I sign that?" "Of course," I said, handing her the pen. She signed her name with a firm, angry stroke. "And I think I can get you a few more." She took the clipboard. "There are a few other mothers on this block who are tired of being scared. Let me go talk to them." She left with the petition and the tablet. An hour later, she came back. She didn't have 3 more signatures. She had 10. We had 33 signatures, more than enough. The recall was on. Brenda had made a critical mistake. She had built her kingdom on fear, but she had messed with something stronger, a mother's anger. The race was over. Now all that was left was the showdown, and I had a feeling it was going to be one for the ages. The night of the meeting, the community center was buzzing like a kicked beehive. Every single seat was taken. People were standing along the walls. I saw homeowners I'd never seen before, people who hadn't come to a meeting in years. Daniel, Laura, and I sat in the front row. We were a team. Sergeant Miller had told me he and another officer would be there just to keep the peace. They were standing quietly at the back, almost invisible unless you were looking for them. Brenda Harrison and Trevor Lynch sat at the head table on the stage. Trevor looked pale and sweaty. But Brenda, she was radiating a weird, electric confidence. She was smiling, greeting people by name. It was the smile of a queen who believes absolutely that her subjects love her, even as they're sharpening their pitchforks. She had no idea what was coming. She thought her email had worked. She thought she had scared everyone back into line. An hour before the meeting, the projector went dark. Someone had accidentally unplugged the power strip and broken the tab off the breaker. The community center manager shrugged so hard, he almost left the ground. "We've had issues," he said, not looking at the head table where Brenda and Trevor whispered. Daniel disappeared and came back with a 100-foot orange extension cord that looked like a hunting snake. "Vending machines are on a different circuit," he said, plugging us into the cola line. The projector hummed back to life. Laura ran her notes. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. "Short, clean, no adjectives," she said, and underlined "vote" 3 times. "Facts will do the yelling. I'll handle the rest," I said. Daniel leaned in. "If they kill the lights, I can dance interpretively while you narrate." "I'd rather face the drain again," I said. When the room filled, 2 of Brenda's friends unfolded a banner in front of our screen that said, "Keep Meadow Ridge safe," in suspiciously fresh vinyl. The crowd booed. Miller crossed his arms and looked at the banner, then at them. The banner slunk down all by itself. Funny how that happens. Brenda wrapped a gavel she had bought on the internet and flashed that hazmat smile. "Welcome, neighbors," she sang. I clicked the remote in my pocket just to feel the weight. The cola circuit held. So would we. She opened with boring stuff, landscaping bids, a complaint about a holiday decoration left up too long. She was stalling, trying to make everything seem normal. Finally, she couldn't avoid it any longer. "Now," she said, her voice tight, "it has come to my attention that a misguided petition has been circulated." She held it up with 2 fingers like it was a dirty diaper. "While it is full of procedural errors, in the spirit of transparency, we will allow Mr. Virtanen to speak for 3 minutes. Then we will vote to dismiss this nonsense." Despite her bluff, the petition forced the recall onto tonight's agenda. She looked at me, a smug little smirk on her face. "Mr. Virtanen, your 3 minutes start now." I walked up to the podium. I had a projector and a screen set up. I didn't even look at her. I looked at my neighbors. "My name is Mika Virtanen," I began, and she's right. This is about transparency, so let's be transparent. Click. The first thing that appeared on the screen was a huge photo of the flooded street with me carrying little Sammy. A gasp went through the room. "This is what happens when a storm drain doesn't get fixed," I said. "Now, let's find out why it wasn't fixed." Click. The audio of Brenda's frantic 911 call filled the room. "He's dangerous. He's threatening me." The people who had been on my side looked angry. The people who had been on the fence looked confused. They looked at me, standing calmly at the podium, then at the screeching voice on the audio. Click. Miller's body cam footage. The whole neighborhood watched Brenda get dressed down by a police sergeant for wasting his time. She tried to interrupt. "This is out of order. This is my private." "You have the floor, Mr. Virtanen," a voice called out. It was Daniel. Other voices joined in. "Let him speak." Brenda sat back down, her face like thunder. Click. The security camera footage. The room was dead silent as they watched 2 figures break into my garage. Then, when the blue chalk dust erupted, a wave of laughter rolled through the crowd. They weren't just watching a crime, they were watching a comedy. Trevor Lynch sank so low in his chair, he almost disappeared. Click. The evidence. I put the ledger page up next to the HOA bank statement. I drew a big red line connecting the payment to Lynch Contracting and the entry in the ledger. $15,000, I said, my voice ringing through the silent room. "Your money, paid to her boyfriend's fake company for a job that was never done. And this is just one of them. The ledger is full of them. The pool, the roof, the landscaping. All of it a lie." I turned off the projector. The room was still. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. I turned to face Brenda. Her face was white. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by raw, cornered panic. She stood up, gripping the podium. "He's lying," she shrieked. "This is a fabrication. He's the criminal. He refuses to follow the rules. This whole thing started because he wouldn't give me a key to his garage. For your safety. For the community's safety." She was spiraling, grasping at the one thing that started it all. Her obsession with control, her need for that key. And in that moment, the perfect line came to me. I walked right up to the stage, stood before the podium, and looked her right in the eye. I spoke into the microphone, my voice calm and clear, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're right, Brenda. This is about keys. It's about safety. It's about trust." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key to my garage. I held it up, letting it glint in the light. "So, let's make a deal," I said. "I'll swap you keys. My garage key for your front door key." For a second, there was absolute silence. Then the room exploded. It wasn't just laughter. It was a roar of catharsis, a tidal wave of release from a neighborhood that had been living under her thumb for too long. The line was a knockout punch. It laid bare the hypocrisy of her entire argument in one simple, devastating question. Fair is fair, right? The vote was called. It wasn't even close. A forest of hands went up to recall her. Only one hand stayed down. Trevor's. The motion passed. Laura Evans was voted in as interim president. The room erupted in applause. And as the clapping reached its peak, I saw Sergeant Miller and the other officers start to move. They walked calmly, purposefully up the center aisle, right towards the stage. The applause died down as everyone realized what was happening. Miller walked right up to a stunned Brenda Harrison. "Brenda Harrison," he said, his voice professional but firm. "You are under arrest for embezzlement and conspiracy." The other officer went to a trembling Trevor Lynch. Trevor Lynch, you are under arrest for attempted burglary and fraud. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was the final, perfect end to her reign. The vote was over. The rule was dead. But for Brenda and Trevor, the real consequences were just beginning. The aftermath was quieter than the storm. With Brenda and Trevor gone, it felt like the whole neighborhood could finally take a deep breath. The tension that had hung in the air for years just evaporated. It was replaced by something new, a sense of community. It felt new and earned. Laura Evans, now our HOA president, went to work fast. She called an emergency meeting, put one item on the agenda, and killed the Community Safety Initiative in one clean vote. A week later, every doorstep got a one-page letter. No spin, a plain apology, a note that a full audit was underway, a promise that the DA was moving to recover funds. She also put up a public spreadsheet that anyone could read. Line items, dates, vendor sunlight. It changed the mood overnight. People unclenched. The healing started. Daniel Park kept his promise. He brought 2 retired foremen, a skid steer, and a truck full of pipe. The HOA paid for materials. The labor was love. We cut asphalt, set new drains, poured fresh concrete, and crowned the street so water would run where it should. Mr. Henderson showed up with donuts and a thermos the size of a fire extinguisher. Mrs. Peterson turned the sidewalk into a buffet line by noon. Kids chalked arrows on the curb showing where the water should flow. Someone drew a little blue cartoon of Trevor slipping. We all laughed and kept digging. We weren't just fixing a hole, we were fixing us. Word got around town. My swap keys line grew legs. At the grocery store, I heard, "Hey, key swap guy." I just smiled. I wasn't a hero. I'm a stubborn carpenter who hates crooked lines. The police finished their part. Miller said charges were filed, and the court would take it from there. Laura set new rules the right way, posted drafts, took comments, and recorded votes. No more surprises. No more fear. The empty safe. I hired a crane to lift it out. We sold it for scrap and put the check toward new playground mulch. Felt right. With the mess finally behind us, I turned back to what keeps me steady. My grandpa's triumph. Garage door wide, sun on my shoulders, I laid out parts like puzzle pieces. Cleaned, oiled, timed, tuned. The work was slow and simple. It let my head go quiet in a good way. Weeks passed. Then one clear autumn afternoon, it was ready. I rolled the Bonneville out. The blue looked deeper. The chrome looked like water. I swung a leg over. It felt like coming home. Key in. Kick. The engine caught with a deep, calm purr. Not loud. Confident. I let it idle while the street held still. I thought about Grandpa. A man has a right to his own space. True, but I learned the rest. A castle needs a good village around it, and sometimes the village needs a backhoe. I clicked into first, rolled on the throttle, and eased down the lane. Fresh drains, fresh paint, neighbors waving. The road was open, the neighborhood was calm. And for the first time since I moved to Meadow Ridge, I felt plain, simple freedom.